Up next, Recovery Capital. David is the chair for the Missouri Department of Mental Health State Advisory Council on Substance Use, Prevention and Recovery, and a coordinator for the Recovery Advocacy Project. He was named a mental health champion in 2017 by the Missouri Mental Health Foundation. David's presentation will provide an overview of what Recovery Capital is and the 4 types. He will also help attendees identify which area of recovery capital they need to increase and how to do that effectively. Please join me in welcoming David to Real Voices, Real Choices.
Hi, my name is David Stoker, and I am a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is I haven't used alcohol or other drugs since January 31st of 2009, and because of that, today I'm able to impact my community in positive ways. One of the things that I have done is I helped create the certified peer training for the state of Missouri, along with a handful of other peers, the Missouri Credentialing Board, the Department of Mental Health, and then what we were able to do is, provide that, and I've been able to facilitate some of those trainings. Recently, though, as I've looked around at other states and what they are doing and what their peers are focusing on, I've really started to see a resurgence of what's called recovery capital. And as I've looked around Missouri and talked to other peers, I've recognized that some peers do know what recovery capital is, but peers really don't know what a recovery capital assessment is, what that looks like, how to do those. And to me, it's one of the best ways for us as peers to track the positive work that we are able to do with the people that we're working with. So if we were in person right now, I would ask you, how many of you heard about recovery capital? And I will tell you right now, even though this was pre-recorded, I am in the chat right now. So if you want to make any comments on that, if you have any questions during this, type those in the chat and I'll be able to reply to those. So that would be my first question is, have you heard about recovery capital? And if you have, just throw something into the comments. And then my next question to you, after I give you guys a minute here, would be to ask you, what does recovery capital mean to you? Like when you hear the word recovery capital, what comes to your mind when you hear that? And I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of time here for some comments before we really get started with this presentation, because I'm curious as I work with more and more peers and interact with more and more peers to see what recovery capital means to them and if they've heard of it and if they're actually using it, right? Because basically what we've done is kind of shifted from a focus on intervention and pathology and the problem to more of a recovery focus or a solution focus, right? I love that we're beginning to shift to adding positives to people's lives instead of eliminating negatives, right? Where instead of doing relapse prevention and saying, here are the people, places, and things you can't be around, we can now target recovery enhancement and say, hey, you know what? Here are the people, places, and things you should be around and engaging with, right? So instead of just focusing on eliminating negatives and opening up some big open spaces in places in people's lives where boredom and frustration and emptiness and loneliness can kind of set in, we're actually focusing more on providing those resources so that eventually we have so many positive things going on in our lives that I no longer have time to engage in those negative practices that I might have used to engage in. So now that we've kind of looked at what recovery capital is to you, my next question would be, what is recovery capital, right? So first off, recovery capital, here's a couple definitions. I would say recovery capital is holistic. And that's what this first definition says, right? Is that it's the breadth and depth, not just of internal, but also external resources that we can draw upon to initiate and sustain recovery from alcohol and other drug problems. And here, a lot of times they say severe, I say chaotic, right? Because it gets to a level where our use is chaotic and it ends up impacting negatively all different parts of our life. The second definition says that recovery capital is conceptually linked to natural recovery. So a lot of us may not have heard of natural recovery. It's also, some people also call it spontaneous recovery. But basically, natural recovery is those who have chaotic use at one point that are able to stop using alcohol and other drugs or reduce their use to moderate levels without going to treatment, without having that rock bottom. Because honestly, I hate even the word rock bottom, because for a lot of people right now, rock bottom's dead. So we shouldn't be waiting for people to hit their bottom. And if you talk to a lot of people in recovery, we didn't find our recovery at our bottoms. Instead, we found it at different varying levels within our lives, because there's multiple pathways to recovery, just like there are multiple pathways to chaotic use. They also said solution-focused therapy, strengths-based case management, recovery management, and other forms of global health. So once again, strengths-based and recovery management allow us to address the needs of the peer as the peer sees it, right? Not as we see their problem, not as clinicians or the criminal justice system sees their problems, right? It's why we actually do recovery plans with the peers that we support instead of using treatment plans, because treatment plans tend to be a lot more clinical, and they tend to look at reaching these objectives that have been set up by an insurance company, that have been set up by a judge, a probation officer, for them to reach, instead of saying, you know what, what's important to you? What would you like to see happen in your life? How would you like to see your life improve? So those are a couple of the definitions, and trust me, there are a lot of them out there. So different types of recovery capital. We said it's holistic, and in our next few slides, we're going to look at every single one of these, right? We're going to look at personal capital, which has a couple different rubrics that it falls under, which would be physical capital and human capital that are underneath that. We're also going to look at family and social capital. We're going to look at community capital, cultural capital, and what those actually look like, what they mean for that person that is working on building recovery capital or addressing maybe some of those deficits. So first we have personal capital, which, like I said, is broken into physical capital and human capital. So with physical capital, we look at like the available resources that a person has to fulfill their basic needs, right? Like their health, health care, financial resources, clothing, food, shelter, residence, transportation, right? So can they provide for their family? Do they have access to public transportation or personal transportation that's reliable and is when they need it? Are they able to provide for themselves, for their families? Is their neighborhood safe? Better yet, is their place of residence safe, not only for them, but for their other family members? Is the environment that they are typically in free from alcohol and other drugs, or people who are promoting that lifestyle, if abstinence is something that they're seeking? Do they have access to clean and comfortable clothes? Do they have insurance, or at least access to affordable health care so that they can have regular checkups and maybe address those major health issues that may occur? Do they have access to consistent nutritious meals? Those are the types of things that we're going to look at with that physical personal capital. Now, with the human capital on the personal capital side, it looks more at a person's knowledge, their values, their educational and vocational skills, credentials, problem solving, self-awareness, self-esteem, self-efficacy, how confident am I that in high stress situations, I can actually make positive choices, or choices that are going to lead me into to a positive outcome? Am I optimistic? Am I hopeful? Right? Because as we know, recovery actually comes out of, hope, right? Hope is what? The belief that one has both the ability and the opportunity to create a better life. So if somebody is hopeful, here we're looking at them having that ability innately, personally, themselves in this piece of it, right? So what's their purpose in life? Do they have recovery rituals that they engage in consistently? Are they setting and attaining goals? Do they have hope that their future will get better and better? Do they now have tools or problem-solving skills that they might have lacked during times of chaos in their life to help pull them out whenever they come into obstacles, or start beating themselves up, or maybe face stigma from the community? Are they an active participant in making their family and their community a better, safer, and stronger place? I always say that was kind of one of the secret sauces in my recovery personally, was knowing that I am engaged in my community, and my community is a better place because I live there. I'm doing things actively to make my community better, whether it's through say a stream team that picks up trash out of Missouri riverways, to, partnering with Springfield Public Schools, going in and painting playgrounds. Maybe it's volunteering at NAMI or a drop-in center, a recovery community center to help do classes. Maybe it's going out and joining in, PTA and some of those things where you're making a difference in your community. So next we look at family and social capital. And here we look at intimate relationships. We look at family and kinship relationships. So we're not talking about blood, right? We're talking about those non-traditional families of choice. The way I always say it is, I can't pick my family, but I couldn't pick my blood, but I can pick the people that are in my circle. I also once heard somebody say, you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. So look at those people that are in your circle that you are constantly around. Man, are they living a life that you would like to live? Is that the kind of person that you would want your son to grow up to be, your daughter to grow up to marry? Because once again, there's an impact there too, right? The people that you're around are also going to have an impact on those people who look up to you and place you on a pedestal, be that siblings, nieces, nephews, younger brothers, sisters, whoever it is that may be looking up to you. Now, there could be other people in the behavioral health field, right? Are the people that I'm running around with the people that I would want the peers that I'm working with to become? Right? I always say that we should set higher standards for ourselves than we expect other people to have. Here we're also looking at social relationships, especially ones that are supportive of our recovery efforts, whatever that recovery may look like for the peer that we're working with. So family, social, recovery capital is indicated by the willingness of, say, intimate partners and family members to maybe participate in the recovery process, in the treatment process, the presence of other people, right, in recovery within our family or within our social network that can help support, right? Those maybe accountability partners or mentors or sponsors, right? Because we need both. We need those accountability partners who are like teammates. And then we also need those mentors, sponsors, which are more like coaches, helps us be effective. So do we have that in our life? Do we have access to sober outlets for sobriety-based things, like things that we may want to do as hobbies, leisure time, fellowship? Do we have relational connections to the institutions in our community, like school, our workplace, church, other community organizations? Like I'm in the middle, I think I'm going to join the MOB here in Springfield, just so I can say I'm a member of the MOB, but it stands for Masters of Business. And it's for people who have created their own businesses, started their own businesses, or are running businesses, and what they can do to support each other and thrive. So do we have those types of connections, and then are we building relationships within those so that we can live a better life? Next, we look at community capital, and with community capital, sorry, one second. My throat got dry. Thanks, everybody. We look at things here that encompass the attitudes in our community, the policies, the resources when it comes to addiction and recovery, those things that maybe promote a resolution of the problems that we're seeing in our community surrounding the chaotic use of alcohol and other drugs, right? So community recovery capital would probably include things like visible and diverse local recovery role models. So do we have those people in our community that are recovering out loud, showing people in the community what recovery looks like and how amazing it is? And if there isn't, maybe that's something we should be stepping up and doing, right? Maybe that is going to be a place for us to fill in, or the peer that we're working with, for them to fill in, is to live that amazing life and be vocal about where they were and where they are now. And a piece that I would add to that is I would make sure that I go through a how to tell my story training. We go through that in through like the CPS training, the Certified Peer Specialist training. I know that's another training that I've come into communities and done, is come in for, several hours and teach people the importance of the words we use. So we can shy away from some of those words that may cause people to instantly have negative thoughts or mind pictures, and instead use words that may garner more compassion and respect, and ways that we share our story where we focus more on, what happened to us that may have driven the behavioral health issues we have, a little bit about how bad it got, and then also looking at some other things there, like, what we did to gain the life we have now, how we're maintaining it, and all the amazing things we've added to our life since then. So I think those things are extremely important as we look at that community capital and becoming that community capital if our community doesn't already have those recovery role models. Also, is there a full continuum of treatment resources? Are there people that it's not just faith-based or 12-step based, it's also treatment-based. There's access to medication. There's access to, I would say a medication support group, family support group, youth support groups, smart recovery, maybe things that we'll talk about here when we get to cultural capital, like, maybe Dharma recovery, or, those things that are going to help people all the way through. Are there recovery community centers or drop-in centers or Alano clubs where people can go and have friendships and build those relationships with people? Are there, those recovery mutual aid resources that I just got through talking about? And if they are they very diverse and accessible? Right? Like when we started the Springfield Recovery Community Center, we brought in we started off with a faith-based meeting, a 12-step meeting. It was actually a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that they started at the center. And then also Smart Recovery, which is self-management and recovery training, which is secular, evidence-based. It relies on, cognitive behavioral and rational emotive behavioral therapy tools that people can learn how to use themselves. So maybe if somebody was turned off by the 12 steps, or maybe if somebody, they don't have a Christian faith, they were still something for them to engage in. Also, like I said, those local recovery community supports are really important, whether those are like recovery schools, recovery ministries or churches, Alano clubs, recovery community centers, those types of things. Maybe even alumni associations. I know I haven't seen a lot of those, but do the treatment providers have alumni associations or groups where they're getting together and supporting each other? And finally, are there sources of sustained recovery support, and maybe early opportunities for reintervention, like when somebody starts to have a little hiccup? It's one of the reasons at the Recovery Community Center here in Springfield, we provide like recovery checkup phone calls. And we also provide free recovery coaching for people in the community if they need it. So maybe I am starting to I've completed treatment, or maybe I didn't even go through treatment, but it was something I was able to do on my own, or through, a faith-based or 12-step or secular mutual support group, or just with the circle of friends that I have, that family and social capital. maybe I was able to do it that way, but now I'm starting to have some issues that are coming up in my life. It's not bad enough that I really need to see a therapist. It's not bad enough that I need to go to outpatient or inpatient treatment, but I would like somebody to talk to maybe guide me through some of that. So we have those, right? We also have, do we have things like employee assistance programs that are helping people that are family friendly, that are helping them find not just a job, but a job that pays a living wage? Because a lot of times it's really difficult if you have felonies, whether they're pending or convictions, to find those jobs that are actually going to pay a salary, right? That you can actually support you and your family on without having to work 70, 80 hours a week. Are there treatment courts? Are there recovery community organizations? So we kind of look at those different things too, and that all falls under that community capital area. And finally, we have cultural capital. And cultural capital tends to be a form of community capital, right? But here it looks at, do we have culturally prescribed pathways of recovery that might resonate with different individuals and families? So like in a Native American community, is there something like maybe the Wellbriety movement, White Bison, the Red Road? African American communities, is there something like a faith-based recovery ministry for Buddhists or people, who practice meditation, yoga, things like that? Is there something like those Dharma recovery groups available or recovery yoga available for them? So is there things that match people's cultural needs? So I guess the next thing we look at is, does recovery capital actually matter? And here I have a couple different studies, and at the end of this, I have a bibliography so that you can look up these different studies, but I also have this here after each one, right? So we have things like recovery capital. What the first study says is both its quantity and quality play a major role in determining the success or failure of natural and assisted recovery. So it doesn't matter if somebody finds recovery on their own or through their social net or family network, or if they find it through treatment or mutual support groups, mutual aid groups, things like that. Social capital plays a huge role, especially they say sometimes that quality is more important than quantity, but what we find here is both of them are important, right? Having a lot of varied recovery capital resources is huge, but also having really good quality, having that amazing mentor, great accountability partners, access to evidence-based programs is just as important. The second study found that increases in recovery capital can spark turning points that activate recovery initiation, elevate coping abilities, and enhance the quality of life. So people are going to live better lives because of it, right? Third one, and I hate just reading slides, but it says strategies that target family and community recovery capital can elevate long-term recovery outcomes, as well as elevate the quality of life of individuals and families in long-term recovery. So if we can target the community and the family and build capital there and get those communities recovery ready, what we're going to see is that people's outcomes are going to be better. So what that means is we're going to have less recidivism, less people returning to that chaotic use where they need help. So instead of having that revolving door, we're able to actually utilize funds better for treatment. So instead of seeing the same people over and over again, we're able to see different varied people because people are actually able to engage with those resources in their community and sustain their recovery instead of, walking out of that quasi-safe environment that might be treatments back into the exact same community and place that they came out of. So again, it's why, things like recovery residences are extremely important too, right? And here I always focus on NAR certified recovery houses. I don't like to refer people to houses in Missouri that aren't NAR certified. NAR being the National Association of Recovery Residences, because we at least know that those places have met a minimum standard of care. And we know that there's at least, there's some oversight. Most clients here, that one says basically that, when people don't have that family and community recovery, it really doesn't matter the treatment that they go through, they really don't gain a whole lot through it, unless that focuses on, surrounding them or helping them find that family, social, community resource. So once again, I think, that's an important piece for us as peers, is helping people build that, right? And making sure that our communities have those and that we're engaging in those. When you have recovery residences, what kind of relationship do you have them? If you have drop-in centers, recovery community centers, Alano clubs, what kind of relationship do you have with those? If there isn't family support groups, is that something that maybe you're working on bringing to your community? And finally, that last one says that post-treatment recovery checkups when needed, early reintervention. So whenever we're able to get people help, a lot of times we can catch it early, which is why we have, accountability partners that can maybe spot those things early. It's why we have recovery checkup phone calls. It's why we have recovery coaches. It's why we have community centers and drop-in centers, so that we're able to engage with those people that may be seeing some issues, and actually catch those issues before they become huge obstacles, right? I'd rather catch something very early. So we need to engage people with low recovery capital through, just be really aggressive about that community outreach. What are we doing, right? Even like hitting bottom, it just means that there's really not a lot of recovery capital there for that person. I mean, that's kind of what a bottom is, right? When that recovery capital is exhausted, people are going to die, and they're probably going to die before they ever reach that mythical rock bottom that people talk about. Because I guarantee most people that say they hit a rock bottom, it could have gone much lower. Right? They hadn't really reached the bottom. Like I said, for most people, the bottom is a death that we don't come back from. So, instead what we're seeing is that people, maybe they don't have hope. They don't feel that they have the ability, or they can't see any place that might give them the opportunity to change that chaotic use, to address the issues that drive. Because as most of us know, chaotic substance use really isn't the problem for most people. It's a solution for most problem. There's underlying issues that we have to address. And if we just address alcohol and other drugs, really, a lot of times that's the Band-Aid, that's the scab. And we're ripping that off and just allowing the wound to gush. What we actually need to do is address the wound, and maybe people won't need to use chaotically once that trauma is addressed. Once they are on medication that can help them with their depression, anxiety, other mental health disorders, diagnoses. Maybe if we can reduce some of that multi-generational poverty, or some of that institutional racism, maybe advocating for bills that actually treat people equally, whether they're rich, poor, white, black. So I think those are really important things, and recovery capital matters because it allows us to see where somebody is lacking, and then look at ways that we can add to that, right? So the World Health Organization has a quality of life domains, and I just included this because I like how it kind of models what we're talking about right now, right? In fact, it may even give us some more ways to look at the recovery capital that we're trying to address here, right? So, they look at, say, that physical domain, and here they look at things like, are people getting adequate sleep and rest? Do they have energy, or are they fatigued? Are they living in pain and discomfort, or are they pain and discomfort free? With psychological, they look at things more like, body image, negative feelings, positive feelings. Do people have the ability to concentrate? Once again, here may be a place where ADHD may need to be addressed for somebody, so that they can actually concentrate, so that they can get a job done, right? I can't get a job because I can't focus on a job because I'm focused on 10 million things. So let's work on that concentration, right? Am I able to learn new skills and then translate that into what I do? Do I have the ability to make good decisions? right? When we look at that level of independence with the World Health Organization, they look at things more like mobility and ADLs. And ADLs are like activities of daily living, right? So can I bathe? Am I able to get myself up in the morning, get myself dressed? Can I feed myself? Am I able to get out? How reliant am I on medication or treatment or counseling that I'm going to? Do I have a work capacity, whether it's paid or volunteer, so that I have something meaningful to engage in? Well, social relationships, pretty easy, right? Personal relationships, family relationships, kinship relationships, sexual activity. For a lot of people, that's a pretty big thing. Honestly, none of us would be here without it, right? So it's definitely something that's important for us to look at and address and be able to do that in a manner that, a serious manner. We talk about it in the CPS training. It's the reason a lot of people stop medication is because of things like that, right? Because it impacts their sexual functioning. It's also a reason that some people may utilize substances because it gives me, I just don't know how to talk to somebody unless I've had a few drinks or unless I've done this or that. So they look at all that with social relationships. With environmental, they look at some of the same things that we talked about, right? Financial resources, access to services, home environment, physical safety and security, access to transportation, those types of things. And finally, spirituality looks at personal beliefs, religion, lack of religion, whatever. And once again, with the CPS training, we have the FICA, which is a tool that you can use to identify just how important faith and belief is to somebody. Because you may have somebody, in fact, I know tons of people that consider themselves extremely spiritual that are atheist and agnostic. So religion, honestly, for many people has nothing to do with spirituality and vice versa. For other people, it does. So it's important for us to realize that. One of the things that Granfield and Cloud did was look at what they called a recovery capital matrix. I was first what's the word I'm looking for? The first time that I really saw this, it's also called a Johari window, but the first time I saw a matrix like this was in treatment court. They have what they call the RANT, and that stands for the risks and needs triage. And basically what the RANT does is it looks at, risk factors like age of substance use, when it started, criminal activity, had they been to treatment multiple times. And then it also looked at those criminogenic needs, things like mental health diagnosis, chronic medical conditions, unemployment, homelessness, substance use. And it allowed us to see, to place people on kind of a pattern where we saw if high risk, high need. And what we found is that, low risk, low need needed a lot less services than people that were high risk and high need needed. And here we kind of find that with recovery capital, right? Except here what we find is that the more recovery capital someone has, the easier it is for them to improve, to discontinue that chaotic use, to find themselves, to get out of negative situations and find themselves in better situations with less care, right? So if I have deficits in my life, but I have high recovery capital, it's going to be a lot easier for me to find success or to live my best life than if I have low recovery capital. If I have low recovery capital, then I need to focus on things I can add to my life that are going to build that recovery capital. So, as people in recovery from behavioral health disorders, I think it's really important for us to look at our recovery capital, to know what that is, to know how to assess it, so that we can kind of see where we may be lacking, and then set goals to improve it. It also allows us to see, maybe things that are missing in our community that we can add. Like, if you go back, 2016, we didn't have a recovery community center in Springfield. So I partnered with 2 other people to start one. And for the first year, we paid for it out of our own pocket. But at the same time, I also advocated to the Department of Mental Health over and over and over again the need for it, especially in a world of parity, right? Where we have mental health drop-in centers, but no recovery community centers that are funded through the state. Lo and behold, in 2017, they started funding several of them, and they're actually getting ready to fund several more, which is super exciting, right? But it allows us to see those deficits, and if it's not there, I mean, if it's always somebody else's job, it's never going to get done. So sometimes we just have to say, you know what, I'm going to advocate for this and try to find people, and we will build this ourselves so that we can have better outcomes. So how do we look at, say, those recovery capital? There's a couple different scales. I would highly advocate being familiar with all of them. The recovery capital scale, and on here I have either the study they come from or where you can access them. But it comes from WilliamWhitePapers.com. If you are unfamiliar with William White, he is if you're in recovery, you should know about William White. He's kind of the historian for the recovery movement, and he has been active for decades. And he has a white paper that he releases consistently all year long. So it's new information that you can read, either things that people are doing, how things have changed, how we've improved, and areas we're still lacking in, so that we can help people become better, right? And the assessment of recovery capital is quite a few more questions. And right, but here, once again, we're measuring recovery capital for people. What my peers do here at the Springfield Recovery Community Center is a BARC 10. And we do it every time we meet with somebody. And it's 10 questions where somebody rates themselves when it comes to that, right? So when it comes to, when it comes to different areas in my life, how confident do I feel? How positive are they? Are they up here? Are they down here? So this is the point now where actually there's a link. And what I'd like you to do is complete a BARC 10. And as you go through and answer this, I ask that you try to be as completely honest as you can when you answer those questions. I know sometimes that can be, it can be kind of difficult, right? Because we're the people that are supposed to have it all together. And now all of a sudden we're looking at our lives and we're like, I don't know how well I'm doing there. So when you look at that BARC 10 that's going to come up, it's going to ask, and you're going to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 6, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And, I'm just going to walk through these questions and give a second as we go through. How about that? So if you want to bring that up really quick, so that you can go through this. I would probably, if you got a piece of paper as we go through this, just write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you'll go through and rate each one of those on a scale of 1 to 6. I don't know. I always have like the Jeopardy theme that kind of runs through my head. So as I give people a second. Okay. So the first question asks, says, there are more important things to me in life than using substances. So do you strongly agree, which is a 1? Do you disagree, which is a 2? Somewhat agree, which is a 3. Somewhat disagree, which is a 3. Somewhat agree, which is a 4. Agree, which is a 5. Or strongly agree, which is a 6. So there are more important things to me in life than using substances is number 1. Number 2 asks, in general, are you happy with your life? Right? Do you strongly disagree? Do you strongly agree? Does it fall somewhere in the middle? Once again, we're rating that on a 1 to 6 scale. The next question says, I have enough energy to complete the tasks I set for myself. So whenever we have those goals and things that we need to get done every day, are we able to get those done, or do we run out of steam? Do we get distracted and then spend our energy on other things because we don't have that focus? Number 4 says, I'm proud of the community I live in and I feel a part of it. And I want to reiterate here, I don't mean the recovery community you're part of. I don't mean the faith-based community you are part of. Here it says the community you live in. Like I live in Springfield, Missouri. I'm part of a recovery community and a faith community, and man, I am very proud of those communities. I feel like they are doing good work. Of course, I never feel like it's enough because our numbers continue to skyrocket when it comes to deaths and things like that. But Springfield itself, man, here I would say that's probably like maybe a 4. Right. I would somewhat agree. I'm a little proud of the community I live in. I do feel like we have some amazing things like the greenways and, we've gotten some good media attention and focus on some of the substance use problems that are going on. But man, we have a long ways to go before we're addressing those things well. Right. So yeah, this doesn't mean this is actually the recovery, the community that you live in. Right? Are you proud of it? And do you feel like you're part of it? Do you engage in things that make your community better? Right? And once again, this is where a lot of times people flip to recovery community. Well, I set up chairs, I do this. I mean, yes, but the community you live in. I think a lot of times it was a big shift for me. And another one of those secret, like I said, it was one of the secret sauces when I realized that I didn't just have to relegate myself to being part of a recovery community, but I could actually be a contributing member of the community that I lived in. And people would support me and interact with me and, see me as an equal, even if we had completely different life experiences. Question 5, I get lots of support from friends. This is positive support, not negative support, right? Once again, looking at those friends, are those the type of people whose lives you'd want to have? If you have kids, nieces, nephews, younger brothers or sisters, grandkids, are those the types of people that you would want them to grow up to be? Are they the types of people you would want them to grow up and marry? And if not, then why the heck are you hanging around with those knuckleheads, right? So I get lots of positive support from friends. I regard my life as challenging, and I don't know why that says if, but I regard my life as challenging and fulfilling without the need for using drugs or alcohol. Right? Once again, 1 strongly disagree, 6 strongly agree, and then, as you can see, there's things that fall in the middle. My living space has helped to drive my recovery journey. Is it substance free if that's how your recovery is? Are you surrounded by things that constantly activate cravings? Or, people that all they do is tell war stories and talk about how amazing it was when they were out there running and gunning? Or are you surrounded by people that support the lifestyle that you want to live now and the life that you want to finally have? Number 8 says, I take full responsibility for my actions. Have I reached a point where I realize that I have control over my life? I may not have control over what other people do. I may not have control of a lot of external circumstances, but I have control over how I react to those, how I treat those. So is it my fault when there are negative and positive interactions, or is it always somebody else's fault? 9 says, I'm happy dealing with a range of professional people, right? I feel like people are my equals and I'm not inferior to them. I have people in my life that are professionals that I work with to help make my life and my community better. And finally, am I making good progress on my recovery journey? If so, that's amazing. Once again, if not, then maybe we have some work to do, right? So rate those really quick. And there is a scorecard and all kinds of things, but really what I want you to do right here, like what our peers do is we look at these these scores when we work with somebody, and we do this each time we see them, and people are like, every time? And I'm like, you know what? It becomes really quick after a while because they know what's coming up. So, and they know how to score better each time they do it. So it's quicker. But it allows me to see, you know, in the past 6 months that we've been working with them, this used to, you know, they used to have they had a 32 BARC score, and now their BARC score is a 41. And so we can track that progress. And if there's, you know, and if there's not progress or it takes a hit, then it allows us to look at where that happens so that we can ask the peer, hey, you know, I noticed that last time you said that there are things more important to you in your life than using substances, and you agreed. And this time, you know, you somewhat agreed. Did something happen to you? You know, and if so, is that something you'd like to address with us? So maybe it's something we could work on, or is that something that you would rather look at on your own? So I feel that's really important to look at those. But what I want you to do is look at those, and then I have included another handout for us that is a recovery capital plan. And basically, what this recovery capital plan does is it allows us to kind of look at maybe those areas that were lower. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to look at an area or two that were low. And I want you to take a couple minutes right now to set a goal, right? In the next year, I want to increase my recovery capital by doing XYZ. So this is going to be a two-parter, right? First, we're going to create a couple goals. And then after that, the next part of this is your to-do list. So in the next week, what are the activities that you're willing to do that will move you closer to achieving your above goal, right? Because this is what I'm going to do with peers. And I tend to work tools better if I've used them myself. So this is an opportunity for us to use this tool too. It's another tool that it's kind of, it comes from William White. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to create. Let's just go start off with two goals. And I'll give you a couple minutes for that, looking at things that were lower on your BARC 10. And then after that, look down at the bottom and find, say, one activity for each of those two goals that you're willing to do in the next week to move you closer to, to get you to maybe where that score improves. You know, I really hope that from here you are able to, you know, is there any questions? And from here, I really hope that you add a couple more goals to this, and you add a few more things to your to-do list, and that you consistently focus on doing a few things every week that are going to increase your recovery capital. And if you're a certified peer specialist or a family support provider or a Missouri recovery support specialist, I really hope that this is something that you incorporate into your practice and start using with the people you're supporting. So I think so far I have seen one question, and it really didn't deal with the recovery capital, but in some ways maybe it does. But it was, how can I help a loved one that's using drugs and alcohol? And I would say one of the best books that I've ever read is Beyond Addiction, How Kindness and Kindness Help People Change. It had kind of taken CRAFT, which is community reinforcement and family therapy tools, and put it into a way so that families can introduce them. And it looks at a lot of things like self-care. Like at the end of the day, I still have to make sure that I'm taking care of me and the rest of my family. even though I have a loved one that's actively using, because if we're not well, it's going to be really hard for us to support somebody else. It also looks at ways to use motivation, positive communication skills, and reinforcement strategies. So that is the one that the one question that I saw, and that would be kind of just a quick overall answer. Also, depending on where you live, I mean, reach out to people in your community. If you have a recovery community center, I think, Sheila, you may live in St. Louis. So next one, why do people say drug and alcohol is a disease? It's your choice. No one told you to drink that drink, smoke that smoke, pop that pill, or take that shot. For the same reason people call type 2 diabetes a choice, even though nobody told you to live a sedentary lifestyle and have poor eating habits, which is why 75% of the people with type 2 diabetes have it. It's a disease because it causes structural changes in our body that can be identified. So scientifically, it's labeled as a disease. Just like, why do people call lung cancer a disease when you chose to smoke that cigarette? People engage in an activity that leads to the development of a disease in the body. I hope that clears that one up for you, Myron. Lorinda. Yeah, honestly, I think that this can help us deal with a lot of things, right? Recovery capital. I mean, everybody's in recovery from something, right? So what I'm thinking is, honestly, you can use this in just about every aspect. I mean, do I have the things I need in my community to support me? Do I have the things that I need socially? Do I have the family or friends around? So I think if we look at that, we can find ways to heal from just about anything we may have that we're doing to an extreme, or that's stopping us from living our best possible life. And I thank everybody for tuning in. So, hey,
David,
Deborah.
Hey, thank you once again for sharing this information. Yeah, Recovery Capital is new to some people, have not really explored that before. So thanks for bringing that to us today. You are just always a plethora of information, and I am just so grateful that you have such a great energy and way of sharing your information. And you have absolutely just I think what we can refer to as the walk-off home run for this conference. And I mean, you have just knocked it out of the park today, and it just made an amazing final presentation for our conference. So we really can't thank you enough.
Awesome. Thank you for hearing that. I will say that it was really weird for me to sit here and do a presentation to a screen when we recorded it, and listening to myself playing back, I'm like, man, I say and way more than I should. I definitely need to work on that in my presenting skills. So I think it was really it was fun, to be able to present something, though, that as I've looked around the state, I've realized a lot of people are not addressing is that recovery capital. They may have other ways of looking at it or titling it, but I think being able to bring somebody, especially a community where a lot of people are either living in recovery from whatever their behavioral health diagnosis is, or working with people that are either living with, active chaotic behavioral health issues, or in the process of recovery, to give them a tool so that they can say, hey, here's some things that it looks like you may you may need to work on. Is that something you would be interested in working on with me? And if so, where would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a question Bruce is asking in regard to the Bark 10, which, by the way, I really liked. When setting goal, I guess when setting goals, you start small? Question.
I think anytime we set goals, we should start small. We should, what do they say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So I can't eat that whole elephant at once, but if I can break it into little bites, like I ruptured my Achilles and gained like 60 pounds. And then I lost 40 of it. Now I've gained back 20. But anyway, but whenever I started through, it wasn't like I'm going to lose 60 pounds. It was, okay, I'm going to start walking 15 minutes after breakfast and after dinner. My goal is to lose 2 pounds a week, not to lose 60 pounds, because if my goal is to lose 60 pounds, 5 weeks from now, when I'm only down 10 pounds, I'm like, oh my God, this stinks. But if my goal has been to lose 2 pounds at a time, then I'm like, man, I'm right on schedule. I'm doing exactly what I need to do. So always set those small goals that build up. It also gives us an opportunity to celebrate and get excited because we can actually see that we're making progress instead of looking at this huge mountain that we have to climb.
Absolutely. It's important, as you said, to make those goals attainable and measurable, and so that you're not just looking, like you say, at the big giant picture or the entire elephant, that you're just looking at it one meal at a time, one bite at a time. So absolutely, I love that analogy. This has been great. I hope you're seeing all of the great comments to you as well. Lots of good information. People completely agree with the way that you tackle the subject, and I know that they're going to walk away with some really awesome newly gained information and able to hopefully take it back to their own communities and use this. So awesome.
Well, that's why we do the Real Voices, Real Choices conference to begin with.
Exactly.
So that we have so many amazing people that are in recovery from whatever that thing is that they're living with, that are coming to this and seeing A, that they're not alone, and B, gaining information from other people that have lived experience with other things that the Department of Mental Health addresses. To me, this will always, I'm involved with a lot of conferences. I think I'm getting ready to run short on time, but I just want to say,
no, you're good.
I help plan probably 4 to 6 conferences a year, actually. And I probably attend another 6 to 10 conferences a year. And this is by far my favorite conference, just because every single one of us, every single person listening, I mean, we're all experts in our field because we have that lived experience. We didn't have to go to college to learn how to live with an ability that we have been able to overcome. Instead, we learned it in real life, hard knocks. We have the wisdom needed, and we're able to impart that to other people. So I think it's just a privilege to have been able to share on this in this conference with so many of my peers. I mean, everyone on here is a peer to me because everyone on here has lived experience. So thank you guys very much for letting me be part of this conference for another year. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And you have honored us with your energy, your presence, and your information. And thank you for the time and commitment that you put into helping with the committee to help pull this event off every year. And although it has changed due to the pandemic just a little bit the last year or two, I have great hope that we will be together again. And I'm looking forward to that. And I know lots of people are looking forward to seeing each other in person. So
I can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you so much.